All right, this is August 21, 2024. This is the NEFIO SIG2 meeting. So as you can see on the screen, we have a very packed agenda, including items that we keep pushing forward. I am not a dictator here of the agenda, so I just want to make sure that things that people added are being addressed. The main plan for today is to continue the ORAN user story deep dive that we started last week with Alexei, and Sagar will be diving more in it today on a specific user story. And yeah, just from experience, that will could easily fill in the entire hour, right, Sagar?
No, I will definitely try not to do that.
Oh, okay, excellent. But just knowing our discussions in the Q&A, it might. So I just want to make sure that if we do go over that we're not pushing away anything urgent. Is there something here in the agenda that we absolutely need to make sure to address today?
Maybe, Tal, could we talk about just renewing the team platform meeting, and maybe one or two of the issues on this list then could move over to that meeting?
Yeah, we could. So let's do that now. So I've noticed Liam hasn't been around for a while. Fikra, do you know?
He's on holidays.
On holiday. Okay.
Yeah, he should be back next week.
How about we decide on that next week? Because Liam is leading the group, so we can see if the time and everything slot is convenient for him that we used in the past. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, but otherwise, is there a platform-related issue we should address today?
I presume it's kind of one Fikra brought up about removing the fleets and controller.
Yeah. I mean, they could be in the platform meeting, but I feel like it still could be in this main meeting, right? But nothing seems to be like blocking or very urgent right now. Okay, let's do this. Let's start with Sagar and see how far we go. And if it really ends up pretty early, then we can start going through the rest of the agenda. Sounds good? Sounds good, I guess. Okay, Sagar, take it from here.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to share the screen. I'm not going to take it long. I'm not going to take quite long, because I haven't made any slides to educate like what Alex has did last time. He really shared a lot of things. So I don't have really architecture slides, so it's going to be quite detailed, just what we are doing in the user story. So I think last time Alex has presented this particular diagram, what we discussed in the R2, starting R2, we made this diagram with everybody in R2 about the orchestration, how it's going to look like. And here we mentioned about O2 IMS and O2 DMS interfaces. I'm taking it as given that all of you are pretty much aware about now these two interfaces, O2 IMS and O2 DMS, which Alex has explained in the last meeting. So what I can explain, so the user story is NF orchestration using SMO. In R2, one part of this user story was NF instantiation, and in R3, the second part of the this user story is NF termination. So these are the two parts which gonna be covered. Which like one was covered in R2, and then third is in R3. Sorry, yeah, R3, and now it's gonna be in R4. The NF termination. Sorry, I was in R2. It's R3 and R4. Yeah. So in R3, the NF instantiation was also not really officially released. So I think in R4, we're going to release NF instantiation and NF termination, both. So what really happens in this, according to this diagram here, as we have NFO. So in this diagram, what is actually I'll focus on is mostly between the interaction between the NFO and the DMS. And DMS is space where there is the workload cluster. And so I'm going to only mention about this these two entities. So here you can have a look on some sort of a detailed architecture. This architecture is still under discussion in the ORAN meeting. So far, this is something, let's say this is something what it's been discussed in a way. So here, if you see that, let's say what we are trying to do now is that the NFO component, which is responsible for NF orchestration, and it's the one which actually communicates with the workload cluster, and then the workload cluster orchestrates the NF. So now what we are trying to do is that we are trying to really place where the Nefio components will be placed, that how all the different Nefio components which we have of today, which we are having in the Nefio management cluster, and some of them we have in the workload cluster. So how they're actually going to fit in this whole ORAN picture, you know? So we started this exercise of fitting components. So what we started today fitting is that only from the NFO side, that what fork I'm going to use, I don't know. I will not cover it. I just going to cover what NFO and DM is going to use. So let's say NFO is the one which is responsible for the NF orchestration. So it will use most of the components which we have in today's Nefio management cluster, which means we need a pod server, we need a pod controller, Nefio controller, token controller, resource backend controller, and resource group controller, because I think one of them can be removed, but so far it's needed as far as I am aware of. And Alexis, do you have a comment? I see your mic is open. Okay, nothing. So, and then we have this downstream Git server. So downstream Git server is the Gitia, what we have. So that's, but as we know that it can be any, so it can be Gitia, it can be GitLab, Git, any Git. And then, so these are the ones which are required to hydrate a package which comes from an SMO user. So SMO user have a particular description. It's going to give the package variant, and the package variant will be then uploaded in the downstream Git, and then that's the place where the hydration process takes on. And then we have the DMS entity. So in the DMS, what really happens is it's responsible for applying all the Kubernetes resources, because what ORAN specifications define, I'll add the link for the specification also, that they define that the NFO sends to DMS a sort of a package. They mostly define something like a Helm chart, where all the Kubernetes resources, like stateful set, deployment, CR, or all the predefined CRs by Kubernetes are packed, and all of that gets deployed, applied in the management, in the workload cluster. And then via the O2 DMS, we can check their status, that, okay, is the deployment properly applied or not? Is the secret properly applied or not? And all these status we can check. So here, to do something similar, let's say what we decided is, like, let's say that as per today's Nefio architecture, we need the config sync and the root sync local to the cluster, where they're gonna to the cluster which they're gonna handle. So let's say config sync and root sync is deployed in the it's in the workload cluster, and config sync and root sync, they're gonna keep on communicating, keep on talking to the root sync gonna keep on talking with the upstream to the downstream Gitia, which is in the Nefio management cluster, and from there it updates. It syncs with the commit which is there, the latest commit, and then it applies the hydrated package. Once it's hydrated, it's going to apply in the workload cluster, and then after that is the NF deployment controller. Sorry, it's the NF controller, or operator. Let's say it's going to take care of treating that hydrated NF deployment CR. So to explain all this in terms of some flow diagram. So here there is a flow diagram for NF instantiation use case. So if we consider, let's say there is an NFO, I would say NFO user, but it will be like an SMO user, gives an NF deployment instantiation request. So it's a request to instantiate a particular NF. So what's going to happen is that there will be more sort of two CRs, two package variants which would be needed. That in the first package variant, we have to explain the operator, because before deploying the NF itself, we need the NF operator to be there. And today, even the NF operator, we are deploying it as a package variant. So So we need to have some sort of, let's say we need to have two package variants, or we can have one big, let's say, package in which there is operator and there is also, let's say, there is also the NF, there is NF, or there is the NF deployments here also. But it's a choice. But so let's say if in the package, we have two different package variant in which first we deploy the operator and then we deploy the NF deployment CR. So it go in the NFO. It's something which happens in today's Nephew management cluster, very classic, where there is a package variant or a package variant set. It gets hydrated, it gets published into the cluster, in the workload cluster. So there are all these Nephew controllers. So I just clubbed everything together. And then there is the workload cluster repo, which resides actually again in the Nephew management cluster as today. And then the DMS, which has, let's say, config again root sync, it fetches from there. And then after that, root sync apply, it gets applied in the workload cluster, and then after that, once it's applied, the KDS the NF operator receives that and processes the CRs and it deploys the NF. So that's how we thought that how it's gonna work. So that's how it is. And the second, if I move now to the termination user story. Okay, Tal, you have a question?
Yeah, just a more practical question. NFO that we put here, is there actually an open source NFO that we can use practically?
Nothing. So there's nothing like that, as far as I know. And what I understand from this whole exercise is that we are trying to make some functionalities of SMO, sorry, of NFO, some functionalities, not all of them.
I see. So maybe as part of building the user stories, we would have to create some sort of mock simple NFO as just a front end for the user story, right?
Yes, we did that actually.
The APIs, yeah.
We did that actually for in R3, since we were not able to finish it properly. We didn't write anything inside in our release note, but yes, we did that. In the code is there in OSC. There is a dummy, there is not dummy, let's say some small code of NFO, it's there. It's given by Capgemini, some other people. They worked on it and they pushed it there in OSC. So it's always going to remain in OSC because it's OSC code. And that's the one which is actually applying, let's say, the package variant.
Okay. Okay, so we have a mini NFO we can use. Okay.
Exactly. There's some sort of
sorry, I cannot raise my hand. I'm not in front of my desk right now, but isn't NFO just a Kubernetes client?
Yes. That's the code it's very simple, yeah.
It's just a Kubernetes client, right? So I mean, when you say we don't have an NFO, I mean we just need a Kubernetes client to be able to apply whatever through the Kubernetes interface.
Absolutely. So that's the code is all about. It's very simple code and it's just doing like a client, nothing more.
Right, but I want to make sure. I mean, Tal, from where you were going, the NFO shouldn't appear as a big system at this point in time. It's only a Kubernetes client because we're leveraging the O2 DMS interface from the Kubernetes profile, which is a one-to-one with the Kubernetes API.
Yeah, I get that in terms of the southbound, but northbound NFO has to present something different, right? There's some sort of different entities, different sessions, right? Because it speaks to the rest of the ORAN architecture, right?
Okay, so you're talking about within the SMO itself.
Well, the left hand here starts with NFO user. So the NFO user uses NFO. It doesn't use the Kubernetes directly, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
This one. So that's the one which we made for northbound. That's some sort of thing. It's there. I can add the link for the repo, which is there.
Okay, yeah, but.
Okay, so if I move forward, because later on I will talk about some challenges. I didn't make the slide for that. I think it's going to be difficult. So now I will talk about NF termination, if nobody have any questions in NF instantiation. Okay, if there aren't, then I'm going to move to NF termination. So in NF termination, so NF termination I didn't complete because since even Nephew, it's not pretty much automatically completed. So I was lost in completing it. So what I did in a very simple way, it's more like the NFO user again asks for the NF termination, NF instance termination. and then it goes to the NFO, and then NFO, what it does is that deletes the package variant. But then today, I think all of you know that when we delete a package variant, it's not automated. We need manual intervention. We need to delete all the package revisions, and once we delete all the package revision, we need to the branch is also deleted, and then the NF gets deleted. So I would say after the deletion of package variant, all this which I have like mentioned here, I'm a bit lost. It's not completely there. So I think once the way it's defined properly in Nefio, then we can reflect it here. So that's what I feel. What's not there today. So these are the two use cases. So if you don't have any questions, so the first challenge which I mentioned, it's this in the NF termination is one of the biggest challenge. That if we can make the termination automated, that would be nice. Then only we can finish this user story. And second is there, which is common to both these user story, is that is about how, there is another arrow which is here. It's like query the NF deployment status. So I think Tal also mentioned in R3 if that when we deploy, when the hydrated NF deployment CR goes to the cluster, the operator operates on it and it's processed the NF deployment CR. It can give the status updates. And yes, that's what and that was implemented actually. So in now some sort of a way, at least an OEI side and for the RAN and core operator, they give some sort of status, whatever they are doing. So we can reflect this status to the NFO user, so the user is aware that what's happening, or let's say to NFO itself, it's aware and it can keep a track. But the problem is it's that this status is only we can query if we query the NF deployment CR. And I think NFO is not aware about the NF deployment CR because NFO only knows about the package variant. So now the question is that should we add some sort of status in like a proper status in the package revision? That in the package revision, we have the status to the level that we really know that the NF is actually working. Because today, package revision, once everything gets merged in the main branch, let's say in the workload cluster, or it's all completely hydrated, package revision's work is done. It does not get any update from, let's say, the NF operator or for this NF deployment CR or some other CRs, that all of them, they are properly deployed, the pod is running and everything is good. So now it's the question to all of us, like how we would like to implement this, So that's the second challenge. That's the second challenge. And I think it's the same challenge and also an NF termination for the query status. So these are the two challenges which I'm pretty much, which I was pretty much facing to not able to highlight it properly. And Wim also mentioned about it in February this year. And the third thing which I want to share is since if some of you are aware about the stats or about the specifications for the O2 DMS, as Alex has mentioned earlier, they are just pure Kubernetes API calls which happen between NFO and DMS. So this particular interface. So since they are pure Kubernetes call, having config sync and root sync inside the workload cluster, what really happens that they remove all these Kubernetes calls because they just do it automatically themselves and they apply all the resources which are there in the hydrated package. So O2 DMS in this case, it just becomes root sync checking with the Git repo all the time, and that's it. So it means that we cannot just follow the standards one-to-one. So to follow the standards one-to-one, I mean, I'm a little bit lost. I mean, how to do it? I mean, one way in the previous meeting we were discussing, and I had something in my mind is it's more like if you put config sync and root sync in the management cluster, and we push them to manage a remote cluster, let's say not the local cluster, but to a remote cluster. That can be one solution, or we find another solution. Or people said more like that config sync and root sync, they're part of the management cluster logically, but physically they are placed in the workload cluster. So, I mean, these are the challenges. I hope I was clear in the challenges. Sorry, I didn't write them. Any comments from anyone? I'm almost done. Yeah.
I think I don't entirely understand the challenge with the root sync, right? Especially if we, config sync is an implementation, but we're not expecting every user of Nefio to use config sync, right?
Yes.
It is the native support in Google Cloud, but maybe other platforms will have different delivery mechanisms, right? But I guess I don't understand exactly why, why the user story here would have to care where that lives, right? These are just pointers. The actual data in the repository is separate from all of this, right? It's a Git repo.
I think it has to, because because then at the end of the day, all this work which we are doing, it will be showcased either in OSC or somewhere, where we're gonna say how Nefio is really helping. So that's why the whole idea was to map the components, and show where the O2DMS is, like how O2DMS is being used. That's why I mentioned it.
Okay. Okay, I guess I'm just not sure why this is challenging. It's just like where we draw it. I understand it is just where we draw the boxes on this diagram, but there's no implementation challenge, right? We're using the same implementation we have right now, right?
Yes, absolutely. For me, it's not a challenge. It's just that if we place if it's just that how to justify that the KTest profile has been used, But okay, this is the third challenge, Apart from that, there are other two challenges also, which I mentioned, which are purely we need to implement.
Yeah.
They don't exist.
Okay. So people are pretty quiet. Is everybody here able to follow? Is there encourage everybody to use this opportunity to ask questions, dive deep. Okay, I guess yeah, people can continue thinking and actually reading it, and we can always revisit with more questions. Well, thank you, Sagar. This was very useful and interesting.
Perfect.
Oh, do we have a link to this presentation and the agenda?
Sure.
We don't. Could you add it?
I'll add that in the agenda with the specifications also, and the code for NFO, which was done for
Excellent.
R3.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we'll just continue marching down the agenda. So we have Rahul asked us to discuss this issue. Rahul, are you here? Oh yeah, I think he said he wouldn't be able to join today. Let's then postpone this because I think we could really use his help in explaining. So to me, yes, this is something that's just known, but that we can do better. But he went into quite a bit of detail here. So Alexei, I see you also commented. Maybe you have more information to add.
Sorry, double tasking here. Can you just repeat, Tal? I apologize.
Oh, there's the issue that I'm sharing on screen right now about the potential, that we know about permissions with the webhook.
Oh yeah, okay. For some reason, I'm just seeing your GDoc, right? I'm not seeing the
Oh yeah, sorry.
the GitHub issue.
I'm not sharing the whole screen. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So I was just a middleman here. We had a quick discussion on the Slack channel. I don't know if I reported the discussion in here. No, I haven't. Okay, but I cannot comment on the issue itself. It's been running with Rahul mostly at this point. So I was just the middleman to make sure it's tracked and not lost. Okay.
Well, it doesn't seem urgent to me. I would suggest just moving it to next week, and if Rahul is here, he could facilitate a discussion. All right. Okay, somebody put this point in. This is a big one. Who put this in? Okay, whoever put this in is not here today.
Oh, sorry, I was speaking on mute. My bet would have been Bala because these topics are dear to his heart, but I don't see him on the call, so we'll have to
Okay.
validate.
Yeah, I'm actually not entirely clear what this is about. So,
Well, I can clarify briefly. What this is about is the ability to delete package variant. I mean, that's the sub bullet number one is the ability to remove package variant in a workable and manner.
okay, yeah, I mean we known this before. Okay, so these three issues are not related. They're just kind of 3 points regarding. Yeah, I think we can tackle them separately, right? And they're
Agreed.
all your
Agreed.
topics. Yeah. But maybe Bala had something in mind in terms of grouping them together. Maybe he wants us to come with up with a more general plan. Anyway, I'll leave this to him to see what he wants to talk about specifically. All right, Fikra, I know you've been working on the auto approval controller and you were soliciting some feedback from John as well. Do you want to say something about this?
Yeah, no, I've made some I have a PR up to make minor improvements on the approval controller. The timing seemed to be feedback there. I don't know, is it your mic, Tal? But yeah, so the timing seemed to be improved, but there's still some some improvements to be made. But yeah, it'd be nice to get some more engagement on this maybe because our it may not be relevant to many people here, but the end-to-end or the CI loop is up in an hour and a half. So it'd be nice to get that down. It's down around half an hour at the moment, but there's still some issues in how we auto approve packages. So yeah, I got feedback from John, so I'm going to try implement a new policy within the approval controller to basically always approve. So it's a new annotation. But yeah, overall, it reduces the timings on the tests. May not be of use outside of that, but I think, yeah, I was just looking to drum up some more engagement on it, if possible. But yeah, there is some odd behavior, especially with the AMF SMF deploy for some reason. It get the AMF in particular gets pushed through to V2, and then it fails the policy check or fails one of the gates.
Yeah, sorry, I was catching up on the reading here too. I posted on Slack too, hoping to get more eyes. I know a lot of people keep asking, they want to get more involved. This is it, guys. This is something we could really use more eyes. I've looked at it, John looked at it, Fikra looked at it, Liam looked at it. It's complicated. It goes into kind of deep aspects of how Porch is designed. Yeah, I think it would be helpful to get a fresh opinion. So
yeah, I think it was introduced when John was still here, obviously by John. But I think with the ports of Porch over, a lot of the watch events were removed, etc. So I think that which the approval controller was relying on. And yeah, there are race conditions there, that especially it may be just specific to our CI. I'm just testing against the Free5GC use case in CI.
um, Here's an idea, Fikra. Do you feel like maybe you can take a few minutes, 10 minutes to go over the code and present it to us and explain kind of how it works right now?
Uh,
I'm putting you on the spot, but if you're ready, if not,
I could show you nice timing numbers for the I could show you improvements in timings for the end-to-end loop, but yeah, um,
Well-
yeah, I possibly could tell, but if it's my feeling is that people's focus is elsewhere, on their own specific thing that they're doing, but it'd be good to just get a general couple of fresh eyes on stuff like this.
yeah, it's true that people are working on their own things, but I think everybody wants to understand Porch better. My thought is maybe you can explain how the auto approval controller works right now, right? What it does and yeah, do
I,
you think
yeah,
we can do that?
yeah, sure, I could, yeah, if it's of interest to others, though. I don't want to bore people.
Um, Anybody think it would be useful? I think it would be useful just to help people delve into this issue more, or um, okay, no resistance. If we can just take like 5-10 minutes, I think that could be helpful. Are you ready, Fikra?
Oh, right now you mean? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I did mean right now, but if not, we could put it next week. Yeah.
No, we could, yeah, I'll hopefully have something better to put together, to show next week.
Okay.
I don't have a
I'll
system
put
up
it
at the
for
moment.
next week.
I don't have a sandbox up at the moment to run into it. Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Um, okay, Rahul is not here, so
Tiger, hand up there.
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to say a little bit. I mean, what Fiacre also mentioned, it's more like, so I discussed with Fiacre also. So the way the timing parameters, the timing is going down now at CI, it's also like playing a bit with the package itself and some other parameters, as he mentioned, requeue parameters and other things, which he will present, I think, next week. Because the thing is, if we're gonna really play with the package this much, I think it's gonna be hard for everyone to design a package, because now I have to find those nice values also for, I think, for OAI, to make sure that, because now in R4 the OAI run was taking more time and core was still like okay, let's say not good but okay. So I think now for every like for every NF we have to find those nice values which can bring down the magic numbers, let's say, which can bring down the total deployment, so it's also a bit difficult, and I think I don't know if there is no explanation today to find out those nice values, right, Fiacre? It's more like a hit and try.
Yeah,
Just
well, I
find
think that,
and
yeah. Yeah, so just to that point, I pulled John in, and John basically agreed with. So there was talk of introducing new policies. At the moment, there's this annotation policy for initial, so that will only approve the first version for so V1. It will only auto approve V1. For some reason, I was seeing race conditions when I changed the get to go directly to the Kubernetes API. It increased the timings massively or reduced them even. So I was seeing race conditions where some of the packages were going to V2 and they weren't getting approved. So the plan is to introduce a new policy, always, I'm going to call it, that was coming from John, which will just always approve, no matter what the version is. But that does then lead back to, does a check in Porch which checks the life cycle of the package, and if it's not in draft, it won't update it. So there's I know what you mean in terms of if someone came along and said, okay, how much delay time do I need? Do I need to, you know, increase the polling of the, you know, the requeue, etc. That will get messy. But I think to address that, I guess John's reckoning was that, you know, you either, you know, you use always, which will always auto approve, or you just remove the annotation altogether, and it doesn't, you know, if the user would be aware then that the package gets created but never gets approved. So it would require manual approval by an admin or somebody outside of the. I don't know if that answers your.
Yeah, this also kind of sharpens the difference in what I did in TKO architecturally, because TKO the data backend is in front of an API server. And the API server also makes sure to validate all data before it goes to the backend. So it never accepts unvalidated data, invalid data, sorry. And part of that validation process is also to see what is the status of the preparation, right? The specialization process. So if everything is completed, it's a simple flag to mark it as approved.
Yep.
So there's no separate auto approval controller. It's just a flag. Do you want it approved when ready, or do you want to put it in waiting mode? But there's no need for a separate like mechanism.
Yeah, it's a pity. It's a pity that Vim dropped, and maybe just, you know, the interest in these controllers has, you know, flagged or reduced greatly over, or you know, since we moved to other alternatives. But yeah, like you said, the kind of the specialization pipeline or the hydration pipeline that does happen for those packages, and the readiness gates associated with those are essentially what, you know, you would assume that's what controls the approval or the auto approval. But it is a there's lots of actors. And, you know, there's lots of actors, you know what I mean? So that's the problem. And I guess that's why there's so many, it's a little bit overcomplicated in terms of approving a package. But yeah, anyway.
So next week, maybe we'll be able to go over it and understand how it works, right?
Yeah, for me, like the Nephew controllers themselves, there's lots in there. If people don't know, like you know, there was a lot of it was built specifically for the FreeFlow GC use case, if I'm not wrong. But the auto approval controller, I think, would be of use outside, or you know, as a generic controller for approving packages or for auto approving packages. Just my opinion, but maybe not yet.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll bring everybody on board next week so we understand what it does.
Okay.
Hopefully. Thanks, Peter. So actually, the next issue I think on the agenda might also be you know, we were talking about. So here I'll show you the Fleet Sync controller. So in Porch, we have the controller subdirectory. And they're the basic internal controllers for all the various, you know, package variants and package revisions. They're all here. But we also have support for Fleet Sync, right? Which is a Google service, right? And the idea was, well, now that we own Porch, maybe it's better to move Fleet Syncs out of the Porch repository and into its own repository as kind of part of the Porch ecosystem, which makes sense to me. But Fikra, do you want to say more about this and what the challenge here is?
Just well, as part of the main kind of epic that John Bonameric started, was that, yeah, so in that was the comment, you know, should we, you know, move this out to its own repo, because it doesn't, as you said, it's Google Cloud specific. So yeah, that I've in a view to complete the other items on that epic, this is part of it, to move it out to its own repo. Yeah, so I guess we're looking for your opinion, Tal, was that we need to decide on a name for the repo.
Yeah, because we're kind of setting a precedent for if we continue extending Porch and adding more kinds of controllers, for example, a topology controller, right? That's definitely been on the agenda. Sorry, on the plan. So how will we name them, right? I forgot which ideas I came up with, Fikra. Probably porch dash something, right?
Where am I going now?
So for
Yeah,
example, it would be, I'll
yeah,
put it in the chat, porch dash fleet sync, something like that. So like if we extend porch with some feature, we could just give a new repo with that name. We don't have to
Yeah,
specify the word controllers necessarily, because I feel it could be like general library code. It can include client code, etc. So it's not necessarily just a controller or only a controller, right?
okay, yeah. I'm just looking for a repo to move it to Tal. If I'm
Yeah,
brutally honest.
I
But
just didn't want this to be a decision between me and you. I just wanted to open it up and get people's ideas before we create that repo and to see if there's any objection. Everybody okay with my idea that it would be just porch dash and like what the exact technology or system that we're interacting with?
Sorry, I actually having some network issues. What was it? Can you please repeat it?
Okay, so the idea is that we were moving controllers outside of porch that should live in their own Git repository, just for the code. And the question is how to name them. So my idea was that we would do porch dash and the name of the technology or whatever, or the system or cloud or product that we're adding support for. So it's like extra support, right?
Okay.
So in this case, it would be porch dash fleet sync. And in the future, it could be porch dash topology or porch dash Tosca or whatever other feature it is we add.
But is this specific to porch? I don't know. I don't know enough about FleetSync, but is this specific to it's managing part of the Google Clouds. I haven't looked into it close enough, but yeah.
You know what? That's a good question. Let me try to look. Meantime, do you have something to say?
Yeah. So a couple of questions, Tal. So they are going to live in the Nefio GitHub org, but you are suggesting you're suggesting a refactoring of the repo for Porch itself, but under the Nefio org. Is that right?
Well, this was part of John's plan even before Porch joined Nefio, that he wanted to separate some extra things in the Porch repository just to make it leaner and like move more optional components outside of the main Git repository. And this was just one of them. But I see there's like very little code here.
But my question is, now that as obviously, at least for R4, if Porch is a dependent thing, I mean, you know, the release madness that we had.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
what does it do from the purely dependency perspective if we separate into multiple repos for push? How do we actually manage that at all?
I mean, it will simplify building Porch with a make file, I guess. I don't know if it's optional right now because there's probably a bunch of extra dependencies and compilation that necessary for these controllers.
If you look at the original ticket there, 465 from John, we're not using this. We're not using FleetSync. So
Yeah.
I know it's petty of me, but I was looking to remove redundant code from Porch, which is part of that epic, I think.
Yeah.
465.
Yeah, to be clear, there's nothing urgent here, right? There's
No, just the naming of a repo and create a repo, and I can put the code in there. That's all. Sorry.
So
Yeah.
basically, in theory, if you agree, it should simplify. In theory, the
Yes.
release.
It's clean up, Bala. Sorry, it's clean up. Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah. There's stuff like and there's other parts of that like removing the function custom resource and removing the package custom resource, which we're not using. Which is part
Yeah.
of it.
To be clear, there's no like special requirement to do this, but since Fikra is working so much on the code right now, and it's just cleaning it up and making it more pleasant to work with the code base. So I'm very supportive of that. I share the same instinct. And yeah, the question here is like, if we're creating a new repository and setting a precedent, then just make sure that we're all on board with the naming of these repos. But actually, the question I think Vish asked was right. Is this actually related to Porch? And I'm not sure. I'm actually, I have a feeling this was beginning of some integration work with Porch that was never finished. Because nothing here. Oh, actually, here we have some more.
See, if you look at the Epic tile, there were other controllers, so they are GCP specific controllers.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so as John mentions in the ticket,
Oh,
there
okay.
were other ones as well. I can't remember the name of them, but they were stripped. They were stripped completely before being brought over.
So another, now I'm remembering, another suggestion I made that we could call it Porch-Google Cloud or GCP. I think maybe Google Cloud would be better for people who don't know. So yeah, like to put extra repositories for cloud-specific support. That actually might be better. So FleetSync can go in there, and maybe other technologies that are specific to Google Cloud.
Yep, that's good with me.
But FleetSync also is not only for Google Cloud. People can install it anywhere. I don't know. This might seem petty here, but look, we can always change things in the future too, right? I guess I'm going back to, let's just call it Porch FleetSync. It might not directly be related to Porch, but we are spinning this off from Porch. And in the future, if we do more work with Google Cloud or things, we can consolidate things and put it together. I think for now it would be simplest just to put this specific code in its own repo. Does that make sense?
So Pietro, one question. I know. Obviously, I know nothing about this code base, and you know, probably one of the best persons to know this code base here. But purely from a software side, I wanted to ask the question: how clean is the code base? Are they entangled? Is it easy to move? Dependencies, things like that.
In terms of the controllers, it's just a drag and drop. But well, it's not quite. So we have to set up the build for the Docker container, stuff like that for the controllers. But do you mean the other parts of the cleanup, Bal, is it or?
Yeah, for example, if you move just this controller code, right? I mean,
just the controller code should be relatively straightforward. Yeah, I'm in the process, but yeah, it's relatively straightforward. Like you're just building a Docker container, that the controller will, you know.
Okay, but it does not have any code level dependencies internally, right?
With Porch, no.
Okay, that's what I meant to ask. Okay.
Yeah.
What does it do? This FleetSync?
Good question.
So it is kind of equivalent to ACM for OpenShift, where it's a way to manage policies for huge groups of clusters. So you can unite clusters into something called a fleet, and then apply configurations and deployments for that entire fleet. So it's a higher level entity above clusters.
Okay.
And it's growing in Google. This is actually a very supported part of Google Cloud, and kind of the approach for managing at scale. To an extent, it a little bit competes with Porch. FleetSync is a different approach to managing to configuration as data at scale. So they can be seen as complementary, but also, may be different, right? So, anyway, but we're not targeting usage of fleets right now, at least in FEO, but there might be interest in the future, so we don't want to throw it out. So it makes total sense just to put it in its own repo right now and revisit it in the future if we want to. But to Bala's question, right? It's not just as Fikra pointed out, it's creating its own repo, dragging and dropping the code, but also putting a make file in and building the images for the controllers, and deciding if we wanted part of our end-to-end testing and building and cutting releases, etc. Right? So it does add an extra repo and another extra dependency, but I imagine the more we invest in Porch, if we continue with Porch, we'll need more things like this, right? As we extend support for, let's say Porch-Argo or something like that, right? Sorry, I have a feeling I'm kind of been overthinking this. Fikra, have I gone too deep here? Is it just as simple as creating a new Git repo and that's it?
No, there would be, yeah, so updating the make file to make the build okay, and then possibly some kind of job to build this. Yeah, but it's not being used by Nephew in any way. But as John, I did create a PR a good while back to just strip it out. But John pushed back, and asked for it to be put in its own repo.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
fine. So that's yeah.
I think it'll be very clean because I don't see it importing any code from the rest of Nephew, but maybe I missed it. So I think if it lives, it's its own repository. There's not going to be any challenges maintaining it in the future because it's really its own code base. I hope. Okay, are we good with calling it Porch-Fleet Sync? Actually, should it be Fleet Sync or just Fleets?
Fleet management,
Fleet
MGMT.
Well, Fleet is very specifically the name of a product.
If it is everywhere in the code, then probably, yeah. So I see everywhere in the code.
Actually, an error on my part. It does import the Porch API, so
It does. Okay.
it does use the Porch API. Apologies. Yeah. So that's the only dependency on the API.
Okay. Let me check something really quickly to see the official name of the product in Google. Yeah, actually, Bella is right. It is just called Fleet Management. I thought the product had an actual name, but we just refer to it as a feature in our documentation. So let me just show. Right, so here's in the Google Cloud, we have introducing fleets. How about just calling it fleets, Porch-Fleets, rather than Fleet Sync. Fleet Sync is like one specific aspect that we're dealing with, but the, yeah. How's that? Porch-Fleets.
Yeah, fine with me.
Okay, yeah, again, we can rename things in the future if we change our idea of how we want to organize it. But all right. Sorry, everybody. This went probably way too long for something so small, but it potentially could have an impact on our future design. So just wanted to make sure. That's what this meeting is for, consolidating everybody around our plan for coding and organizing the code.
We can always rename the repo, though, all right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm for Porch Fleets. If nobody disagrees, let's do that. Okay, so does bring us to the top of the hour. Looking at the addenda, I'll go back. So, all right. So we'll push more things to next week. Okay, we have 3 minutes left. I did want to mention something that I posted on Slack regarding the upcoming workshop, or sorry, dev meetup, or what do we call it? Summit. The dev summit that we're going to be having in October. And my hope to use that, like we did with the last summit, to really delve into decisions regarding the platform and its future. I'm hoping to get all our ducks in order to be able to make a decision over what technology we want to invest in for Nephio's future, whether it's continuing to invest in Porch or whether to go in another direction. And SIG1 is hosting, a few Q&As regarding our options, but I think SIG2 should be involved too. My proposal was that we not just talk about it and look at presentations, but we could actually build POCs with these different technologies. For example, take Argo and try to build, say, one of our simplest user stories, like the initial free 5GC stories from R1, and just try to implement them in Argo, for example, right? Or in TKO, or in KubeNet, or in Flux, right? And obviously there will be missing parts and there will be some hand waving, but I think that experience could tell us something about what challenges are ahead and if it could even work or if it's just too far away from what we're doing to make sense. Yes, please, Vish.
One of the challenges is time, right? In general. And I felt the same thing even in the Nephio workshop in 2022 as well. So we went into Nephio, something to consider so that this is successful, right? What we didn't have at the Nephio workshop in November 2022 was that we didn't know not everybody understood. So it's almost like you need a.
I'm not suggesting it. At least I wasn't proposing that we do it during the summit. I was proposing that we start soon, so we would be ready with that data for the summit.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So at least the authors of some of these, they need to set up some sessions, hands-on sessions, because it's more like a context shift for some of us, right? If you're in the middle of something, if you need to go learn something, we need to carve out time. So having some sessions, either KubeNet or TKO, to get us familiar, that is the way to do it, is what I feel. It's a suggestion again. Please feel free to disregard it if you want to really see some traction there. That's my point of view. But again, feel free to disregard it if it doesn't make sense.
Well, we're at the top of the hour, so we won't discuss this more, but very good points. I'm going to put this on the agenda for next week, and maybe we can discuss this in more detail and see if I'm suggesting something completely impossible or if it's something that people are interested. How's that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing like me and Daniel were working on, it took us, thought was going to work in 3 days, took us like about almost like 2-3 weeks. You know how things can go off. So it.
Yeah. Well, we'll start in August. We'll have September and after, and it could be a side project, right? In addition to what's being worked on. It could be a single person working on a POC or two, or I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to. I want to respect the time. We can discuss this in more detail next week. I just wanted to kind of put eyes on that. All right.
Very quick. Yeah, very quick before we drop. Could I? Who will I task the repo creation to? Yourself or Bala? I guess.
I'll do it right now.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. By the way, I don't have the permission.
Okay.
Oh, you should. Okay, that's a different problem. But anyway, okay. I'll do it right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you. And owner's file and all that crack tell maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Well, thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.